VRR, verbal refresh rate, is not a new technology at all, especially when you're a PC player. You're using this feature or this technology in form of NVIDIA's G-Sync or AMD's FreeSync for a very long time. And even the Xbox Series supports VRR since the launch. And not just that, the previous Xbox also supported or still supports VRR. Hardly used in any game because back then it was just too soon, too early for VRR on the console. Nowadays, more and more games are actually supporting VRR, verbal refresh rate, and thanks God, at some point Sony PlayStation 5 also supported VRR. Unfortunately, not in the same quality as on the Xbox. Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. So before we start, please keep in mind this is not a bashing video about the PlayStation 5, not at all, okay? This is just a video about to explain how VRR or verbal refresh rate actually works on the PlayStation 5 compared to the Xbox Series, because it is superior on the Xbox Series X or Xbox Series in general. And that's the problem, because I like to have the same great feature on the PlayStation 5 as well. And yeah, why? Because I like to play games like Resident Evil 4 without any stuttering in any graphic mode. And this is just possible on the Xbox Series X, not on the PlayStation 5. Despite the fact that this game on the PlayStation 5 has a higher frame rate, it's still stuttering. It is stuttering more than on the Xbox Series X, and I can explain why. We need to start with a couple of basic information to get actually all the information what we need, okay? So when we're talking about VRR, we're talking about a VRR window where VRR verbal refresh rate can operate, okay? In case of the PlayStation 5, that's 48 to 120 FPS. On the Xbox Series, and that's according to my info, it is 40 to 120 FPS. So you can see there's already a little bit of a difference or a little bit of a benefit or advantage for the Xbox, but this is actually not the biggest problem. 8 FPS more or less, it's really not, it's not the problem. We're talking about something else, because we just can operate between 48 FPS and 120 FPS on the PlayStation 5. Below this, we have a problem, because then we would need something called LFC, low frame rate compensation. And unfortunately, this is just working out of the box or natively or on a hardware side, let's call it like this, on the Xbox Series, not on the PlayStation 5. To make LFC working actually in games like Gran Turismo, The Last of Us, or here Horizon Forbidden West, there is a software implementation needed. And so far I have really just seen this on, I wouldn't say AAA games, but first party games, because this here, where's my Resident Evil? This of course is also a AAA game, but we don't have LFC support in this game, and that's why we have so much stuttering on the PlayStation 5. And now of course I like to explain a little bit in more detail why this is happening. Okay, so again, the problem is not that the PlayStation just supports 48 to 120 FPS in VRR, or in this case right now in Godfall, and it's a great game to test actually, just 48 to 60, because we have no 120 Hertz mode. And this is also a big issue for the PlayStation 5, because comparing this to the Xbox Series, we can actually not toggle a 120 Hertz mode. We have no always on option. So what I'm talking about is actually this one here. Let's just jump, no, not this, let's just jump into the menu. And no worries, usually I'm not sitting that close, okay? Because always I'm getting comments like that, I'm not sitting that close. It's just to show you actually a couple of things. 120 Hertz output, there is just the option automatic or off. There is no always on option as on the Xbox Series X. And that's the first big problem, because this is a mandatory feature or mandatory requirement, let's say like this, to actually have a proper VRR support, because we need to talk about this LFC, low frame rate compensation, because right now everything is fine, because we are in the VRR window, 48 to let's say 120, again just 60 here, but I can show you what I'm talking about. So right now 50, 51. So what is happening right now? This one, 51, is coming from the console, 50, 51 FPS. It's coming from the game supplied or delivered to the display. So all what the display is doing right now is refreshing the screen 50 or 51 times per second. Variable refresh rate. Okay, so that's all what is happening, and then you don't have any stuttering at all. Picture's a little bit blurry because we just have 50 FPS, but that's how it is. There's no stuttering at all. As soon we're falling outside the VRR window, and that's when you can see this here, we don't have now suddenly 60 FPS. No, we are now outside of the VRR window, and I can clearly show you this. So we have now 49, 48, and the more I'm moving in this direction, the more demanding the game gets in, or for the GPU actually. And then you can see at some point 48 is still in the VRR window, so no stuttering at all. But you can see at some point it will just jump to 59. Can you see this? 58, 59. Again, this is not 59 FPS right now. This is because we are outside of the VRR window. And what is happening then? The console and the TV knows the VRR window and will just disable VRR, and therefore the screen falls back to the next available refresh rate. And in this case it's 60 Hertz. That's why you can see now 60 FPS. It's not FPS, it's actually 60 Hertz. And yeah, the frame counter shows this in 60 FPS. So the problem here now is that you can't do anything about it, because this game supports VRR but not LFC, not low frame rate compensation. Therefore you have no stuttering here. Let me hopefully you can see this on the screen. Unstuttering here, a lot of stuttering, then no stuttering, absolutely fine, and then it starts to stutter again because we are outside of the VRR window. As you can see here, 60 FPS, that's not correct. There's nothing what you can do about it on the PlayStation 5, because you would need, first of all, a 120 Hz output to make LFC actually possible, and you would need the LFC support for this game. But unfortunately, again, it has to be done by software, by a software application, by the game developers. But in most of the cases, like in Resident Evil, it's not happening. And I was going to demonstrate how LFC low frame rate compensation works on the Xbox Series with this game, but unfortunately this game never falls below the VRR range of the Xbox Series, which is 40 FPS, and therefore there is no stuttering at all. As you can see, we have 50, 53, 52, same frame rate as on the PlayStation 5 more or less, but even here on the very demanding spot it doesn't fall below 40 FPS. So that means to demonstrate how LFC works actually on the Xbox Series X, I need to find another game. But thanks God we have Elden Ring, and it runs really bad on the Xbox Series. As you can see here right now, 45 FPS in the graphics mode. But let me show you one thing before we continue here. Let me show you my settings actually, because this is very important. So I told you already that we have the possibility on the Xbox Series that we can toggle between a 60 Hertz and a 120 Hertz output, okay, mode. So right now, maximum refresh rate from the screen would be 119 Hertz. Let's just change this back to actually demonstrate something. So here now back to 60, and now we're jumping back into the game. So we know the VRR range on the Xbox Series is 40 to 120, okay? So that means right now we have 48 frames per second coming from the console, and the screen again is refreshing the screen right now 49 times per second, okay? So when we making this a little bit more demanding for the game, and you can see now with 40, let's just try this again. 42, 41, and as soon you can see 59, that doesn't mean we have 60 FPS. Again, we are outside the VRR window. So the same thing happened here as on the PlayStation 5, because right now LFC, even the Xbox supports LFC, LFC can't work because we have restricted our screen to 60 Hertz, and that's the main thing. So what we need to do now is, and we can do this here live on the fly, we're just changing this to 120 Hertz. We're going back into the game. Oh, let's go back here because I like to have exactly the same. So let's do this again. So we talked about 40, 45, 50 FPS when we looked at the stone. Can you see what now is happening? This shows now 103. So let's say 100. we don't have 100 FPS. This is called frame doubling caused by LFC. Because LFC knows, oh, we're very close to the VRR window. You know what I'm doing? I'm just doubling the frame to actually fool the screen, and the screen thinks now, hey, we are still so perfectly within the VRR range, I don't need to do anything. And what is happening now when we looking up, actually, you can see this goes to 117, 110. So this right now is frame tripling, because you can just imagine we had around 40 FPS here. When we're looking up, we have around, let's say 30, 35 times 3 is this value, roughly, okay? So this right now is frame tripling caused by LFC. And what should I tell you? There is zero stuttering. Don't get me wrong, the picture is blurry because we have a very low frame rate, but there is no stuttering at all. So let me just disable this again. So we are back to 60 Hertz. Oh shit, wrong button. We are back to 60 Hertz maximum refresh rate, which means LFC can't work. So that means, hopefully you can see this, we have a lot of stuttering. Again, this is not 60 FPS, this is 60 Hertz and we are outside the VRR range. As soon as I'm looking here, we are inside the VRR range. Can you see how smooth the picture is now? I hope my camera can catch this. And by the way, if you see some flimmering, this is because of VRR and we have a very dark game actually. That's why my camera is capturing, or actually capturing the flickering as well, but I can't see it with my in person. It's not visible in person, okay? So you can see no stuttering at all. As soon as I'm looking up, we are outside the VRR window. LFC can't do anything because it can't do frame tripling, frame doubling, because the range is not wide enough. We need 120 Hertz. You can see a lot of stuttering. Let me change this back to 120 Hertz. And I'm so grateful actually that this is happening or working actually on the fly. So let's do this again. We saw we have around 40, 45, 50 FPS. Let's say when we're looking at this. So this is around, this is probably also already frame tripling. Very hard to tell, but can you see? There's no stuttering at all. This is just a very nice experience. Don't get me wrong. It's still a very long frame rate, and I would like to have a much higher frame rate without any doubt. There's no doubt about that. But this is what LFC is doing, and this is unfortunately what is missing on the PlayStation 5. So what is my summary now for this video? Without a doubt, VRR on the Xbox is just superior over the PlayStation 5, but that's just Sony's fault. This has nothing to do with the PlayStation 5 on its own or itself, because there is no hardware limitation as far as I can see. Sony just didn't do the whole lot, in my opinion. They just, I don't know why, to be very honest. So LFC, low frame rate compensation, is for me a mandatory feature combined with VRR. But unfortunately, it's not working out of the box or natively, let's call it like this, as on the Xbox Series. And that's why games like Resident Evil, that's why I'm saying that this game runs actually better on the Xbox Series, despite the fact that we have more frames per second on the PlayStation 5. But the problem is we're falling in certain graphic modes below 48 FPS, and therefore you have stuttering. Even the Xbox Series offers just, let's say, 40 FPS. We still have no stuttering at all because LFC is working as it should be. So don't get me wrong, we have games where LFC is working, but they had to implement this with software or through software. So this is not a thing what can be done like on the Xbox. That's the problem. That's the main problem. And I, by the way, like this game, okay, in terms of graphics, okay? But anyway, maybe gameplay is not the best. Anyway, so this is something what Sony needs to change, in my opinion. We need to have hardware native supported LFC, like on the Xbox Series. And the 8 FPS difference, 48 to 120, 40 on the Xbox to 120, that's not the big deal, to be very honest, because as soon on the PlayStation 5 LFC would work, it would work below 48 FPS, so there is no problem anymore then. So it doesn't matter if you have a VRR window from 48 to 120 or 40 to 120, it doesn't matter as long LFC would work, but that's not the case, unfortunately. So Sony, do us a favor, because we like to enjoy games like that on the PlayStation with, where's my controller? Here, with a controller like that, but I like to have no stuttering in all the graphic modes, as on the Xbox Series. That's not too much to ask. Well, thank you very much for watching me. I see you guys next time. Bye.